Okay, let's take a look at creating an RSVP-TE back-to-back configuration. So for this setup, I'm going to use 2 ports. So one port is going to be the head end, and the other port is going to be the tail end. So from the list of protocols, we look for RSVP, and we want to choose the RSVP-TE, which is P2P version. That will be our head topology. So we'll name it head end. Just for sake of clarity, naming is always something that I encourage because it helps you later on in different parts of the GUI when you're pulling information in. It helps you identify which component belongs to what configuration. So we'll do the exact same thing for the other port. Again, I'll rename the topology. This one I call it tail. Couple of essential parts of very basic configuration. First of all, I like to start with just one session on each side. Reason why is that it's always easier to make sure you have a basic configuration working. The multiplier's job is to increment things based on the master pattern that you specify. So we don't want to worry about that right now. We want to make sure the basics are correct, and then we could increment later. So everything in the NGPF uses the grid and the concept of master row, which provides a pattern. And then when you add more rows by using the multiplier basically, the pattern basically defines what value each row will get assigned to itself. So here I'm doing a back-to-back, so I just basically pick one port and make it act as the gateway for the other port. That's basically as simple as it gets. So mirroring the configuration to allow me to basically get the IP stack to come up by resolving the ARP. Okay, so we got that configured. Next, we have to configure the loopback interface. I'll choose 333 for the right side, and I'll choose 2222 for the left side. Matter of fact, it's already 2222, so that way it kind of makes sense to me when I see it in the other parts of the configuration. Now, the next thing we want to look at is basically making sure that our RSVP-TE interface configuration is correct. So we have the DUT, local IP. So on the left side, if you remember, the address on the right side is .2, on the left side is .1. So we have to kind of remember that everywhere. And then as we go through the configuration, we will have to just double check that. And it's correct over here. So next we'll go configure the tunnels. What we have to do, click on the RSVP-TE stack, and then we'll specify the number of P2P ingress LSP count, at least one. Once you choose one, you will get the tab that shows up as the head or ingress LSP config. One thing you have to make sure is we have a lot of tabs when the configuration is complicated. You have some tabs that on top basically tell you the, I would say, top configuration level, and then you have sub-tabs that will have subcategories related to that configuration. For example, here we have the tunnel head in the top here, and then we have the related parameters down here for that tunnel. So remote IP is very important. Here we have to punch in the remote IP of the loopback interface of the other side. So you may ask that what happens in case of a DUT. This is something that you have to kind of figure out from the DUT. Okay, so that's configured on this side. Now on the tail, I just have to make sure that my tail is enabled, and we should be good to start this configuration. So quite clearly, some of the configuration of the head is actually matching your tail. Now if you had a DUT as the tail here, you just have to make sure that those parameters that we just configured are reflected correctly, or basically are pulled from the DUT and put in the GUI. A lot of times what we get is that customers to basically start the traffic and start the protocol and it doesn't come up. That's because the interface configuration wasn't actually adjusted to what the DUT is supposed to be. Now you notice my TE is not coming up. So one of the reasons, well, probably the only reason here, is that I had a tunnel head on the right side that I forgot to disable. So all I have to do is stop that particular scenario item and change the P2P LSB count on the right side, and then we could apply it on the fly. So if you see that there is a parameter that you're allowed to change on the fly, then you can apply that with the Apply Changes button, and there we go. We have the RSVP sessions come up. So that concludes the video to configure RSVP-TE in a back-to-back configuration. The concepts, however, are the same when you are through a DUT, so all you have to do is make sure what we just configured here is cross-configured between the DUT and Ixia. Thank you for watching.